Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Secretary for being with us today. I'd like to pick up back on the Bigger Waters Act, if we could, a little bit. I think you said that there are 35,000 insured properties in Pennsylvania with flood insurance. Yet my concern is, it's my understanding that there's 5 to 6 times as many properties in Pennsylvania that are uninsured and are in the flood area, and they and the insured ones, as far as I can understand, given the current situation, are never going to be able to be sold again. I think that you know, I totally agree with what you said of discriminating between residential properties and commercial properties and seasonal properties, second homes, whatever you'd like to call them. But I also think that we need to make a discern between properties that are often flooded and properties that are not often flooded. I know of examples in the borough that I live in where we've had properties that are by flood elevation, by the firm maps, that they are considered to be in the floodplain, but they may be flooded back in Agnes in '72 and have had no flood damage since then. They've moved their hot water heaters, their furnaces, their electrical panels and everything up to the second floor, but they're still in the floodplain, and there's nothing that elevation can do. Some of these homes were built in the 1800s. They're beautiful brick homes that have been there along the river, you know, for a very, very long time. And I fear that we have whole sections of communities that are just going to go off the books, and I don't think that there's an understanding of what that's going to do to other properties. And we are a lot in Pennsylvania. We have 3 major watersheds, Susquehanna being the largest watershed, and I'm just very concerned about the ripple effect of this, as you know, as you alluded to, and I'm just very concerned, you know, and if you can, you know, continue to be an advocate for us at the national level. But what we're being asked, you know, and it is a federal program. It has been a federal program since 1968, I understand. But what we're being asked in areas where this is a big problem, and I have another borough in the district I represent where 65% of the properties are in the floodplain, and I mean, that whole community could go away. And it's a borough of more than 3,000 people right now, and I could see the whole borough going under in the next 10 years if we continue on the path we're on. So the question that I'm being asked by my constituents, and I know that other representatives are, is, you know, if the federal government doesn't step up to this and doesn't do something about it, is there anything that we could do at the state level I know it's traditionally it's been a federal program, but is there something that we can do at the state level if the federal government fails to step up to this problem?
I have been asked that question as this has kind of come to light over the last quarter a couple of times. I don't have an answer for that because if the federal government cannot address it, and I believe they can, if they're willing to make some hard decisions. If they don't, or if they're not willing to do that, then I think states like Pennsylvania really are going to have to make some tough decisions that have what I'll call social and political and economic impacts that are going to be hard for people to deal with. You know, when it comes down to when you go into an insurance program, you have a specific coverage for a specific event. This may be one of those that eventually gets to the point where you can apply that principle, that if society-wise, if at the Commonwealth level, there's a judgment made that we need to protect those, then literally we're talking about an undertaking in the event of a problem, either on a mass scale or on an isolated basis, that we would step in and generally take care of people and rebuild. Those are decisions that are going to be deep and long and difficult, and I'm hoping that we can work through the federal side to raise the best suggestions on a way to move this forward in a way that keeps it on a more federal level and not a state or Commonwealth level.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and I hope that happens too. And I think there are things that can be done other than the Biggert Waters Act to address this issue. And I just have one thing that I hear, and I've not been able to pin it down, is that the NFIP program was doing pretty well before maybe Katrina and Sandy, and that a lot of money was spent taking care of people who did not have flood insurance, and that has exacerbated this problem, and that if that had not been done and the program was run the way it was supposed to, that it still would be solvent, and this crisis would not be addressed. Is there any, to your knowledge, is there any factual basis to that or not?
I have not heard that in any way that I'm convinced is fact-based, but having said that, when you start with a premise that, well, if you had to borrow money to buy or build the property, you need it, but the person next door to you that didn't need to borrow money doesn't, I think you're on slippery ground as far as how do you spread risk. And I think that may be part of the discussion that we're going to talk about as this thing comes forward.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I agree. And I'll just point out that, Pennsylvania, a long time ago, we had the Johnstown flood. There was no FEMA, there was no NFIP. We took care of it here in Pennsylvania, and I think that we will have to make hard decisions, but I think if the feds don't step up to it, I think the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania can, and I think if that happens, we'll be looking to you for your expertise and guidance. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.